So, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Anne and I'm in charge of talent and studio planning at Walt Disney Animation Studios. And I'm also a proud member of the Women in Animation group in LA and part of their advisory committee. And I'm really proud and happy to be here because when I started in animation about 30 years ago, having a panel like I have today would be impossible and unimaginable. And I'm very, very proud of how far we've come and very curious about what these women have to say. But first of all, I will ask each of them to briefly introduce themselves about what they do right now and also what brought them to the position that they're in right now. And we'll start at the other end of the table. Ramsey.
Okay. Hi, I'm Ramsey Naito. I head up animation for Nickelodeon. I think what's most important about me is that I'm an artist, and I went to art school all my life. I started my, I went to art school all my life, and I graduated from Baltimore School for the Arts. I went to Maryland Institute College of Art for my BFA, and I went to CalArts for my master's, where I met a lot of animators, and the animators were the coolest, and they all got jobs after they graduated. And I got my first job at a company called QUI, where I was a PA. And I worked on a TV show called Duckman and Rugrats. And from there, I worked at a bunch of places, so I'll try to keep this short. But I worked at Classic Chupo. I worked at Nickelodeon Movies, where I oversaw a SpongeBob movie and Jimmy Neutron and Barnyard, and then I went on to work at Blue Sky and Cartoon Network and DreamWorks, where I produced Boss Baby. And then from there, I joined Paramount Animation and then Nickelodeon to oversee the studio that I'm currently doing right now. So. I don't know, I worked at a bunch of places, so I feel really awful that it took up so much time.
I don't think you get here in one shot. You just don't. I'm Andrea Maloro. I'm the co-president of Fox Animation and Blue Sky Studios. I wasn't an artist. I love artists, and that's why I do what I do. I started in live action, actually in the creative end of it, and I switched over pretty rapidly after a few years into production. I love producing, and producing artists was like the best job in the world, but I went through live action to visual effects and then into animation, so I got the best of all worlds. I was everything from a coordinator and an assistant to an executive to a line producer and a producer and a visual effects producer. I worked at TriStar and Sony a few times over, and Digital Domain. That taught me a heck of a lot of working with artists. And then I was lucky enough to work with great people at Sony Pictures Animation for years. And then I've been at Fox for almost the last 10 years, and Blue Sky. So that's how I got here.
Hi, I'm Margie Cohn. I'm a fairly newly minted president of DreamWorks Animation. I started, if you had asked me what I wanted to be when I was in grade school, I would have said an art teacher. It was a passion of mine. I was an avid reader and eventually went to college and got a degree in studio art and English. And then soon realized that my taste outstripped my ability. But I still loved the creative process and found, happened to fall into television at the beginning of the burgeoning cable boom and found my way to Nickelodeon, which was an unbelievably creative and dynamic environment. Also run by a woman, Jerry Laybourne, who had been a school teacher. So you really felt like everything was possible, anything was possible, and if you had a good idea, it would be produced. So I became a producer and worked in live action for many years, added animation to my portfolio, and stayed there for over 20 years. When I left, I went over to build the DreamWorks television studio. And not only was the opportunity to build something from scratch just unbelievably exciting, but I loved the brand DreamWorks, I loved the content, and then we were producing for streaming, which just gave all of our creative imperatives, our production imperatives, everything changed and became wide open. It was so incredibly exciting. So I did that for 5 years, and then just 5 months ago, I was asked to run the entire studio. And the opportunity now is just looking at DreamWorks as a place where IP finds its best home and its best iteration, be it feature film, short film, TV series, etc. So that is my story. Melissa.
Good story.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Melissa Cobb. I'm the head of original animation at Netflix, which means I'm one of 3 different kind of groups that run animation. There's Mike Moon, who does adult animation, Darn Judarian, who does anime, and then I kind of oversee all of kids and family animation, including the feature films. And I started out, well, I don't know, how far back?
No numbers are necessary.
No numbers are necessary. No, I think I've always been a little bit of a dreamer. I grew up wanting to be an astronaut and loved reading and spending time in kind of immersive and crazy worlds. And after college, ended up producing theater for a while and then moved to LA and did independent films. And then found myself at Disney doing big studio features as an executive. But fell in love with animation when I actually moved over to Fox and was working with Chris Maledandri at Fox Family Films, where we started doing animation. And through a bunch of other things, ended up at DreamWorks, where I produced 3 Kung Fu Panda movies, which took me from my daughter starting school at 4 years old to pretty much when she graduated from high school, so most of her lifetime. But it was an amazing adventure and led me to spend a lot of time in China, including with the DreamWorks studio in Shanghai, which was an incredible experience, after which I was given the opportunity to come to Netflix and to really focus on how they could help build out their kids and family space that had really started with the DreamWorks material that Margie was making. And so I've been there about 1.5 years, really looking at what we can do to continue to create animation for a global audience.
Hi, I'm Christine Belson. I started in live action, where I worked either as a producer or an executive on a wide range of movies, from Forrest Gump to the Spice Girls movie. And I love the Spice Girls movie. And 15 years ago, Forrest Gump's okay too. 15 years ago, I went to DreamWorks Animation, where I was lucky enough to get to be one of the producers on the first How to Train Your Dragon, as well as The Croods, and lucky enough to work with Melissa and Ramsey at DreamWorks. And then 4 years ago, I was asked to come and run Sony's animation division, and it was hard, actually, to leave DreamWorks Animation. I loved it there very much, and I got my whole education there, but it was an awesome opportunity, and I took it, and here I am.
My name is Allison Abate. I run the Warner Animation Group, so it's the theatrical animation division of Warner Brothers. I've only been there a couple years because I've mostly been a producer of animation in my life. I got my start at Disney back in the day. I was a temp, and temped at Disney one afternoon and ended up staying for years. That was right at the end of Little Mermaid. So I always say that I sort of got in on the ground floor of the renaissance of sort of feature animation. And I was very lucky because I got a lot of opportunities to sort of be kind of in the right place at the right time. I met Anne in Paris when we did Runaway Brain, but also got to work a lot in stop motion. I produced Corpse Bride and Fantastic Mr. Fox and Frankenweenie, so I always feel like I was very fortunate to be able to sort of work in a lot of different areas of animation, and now I've only been an executive for a couple of years, so it's been an interesting journey to get here, but it's fun to see it from this side.
Thank you. This morning, Dr. Stacey Smith and her team shared with us the results of their study about inclusion in the animation industry and pointed out some very good news, which is that currently in the top leadership positions in animation in Hollywood, we have a 50-50 gender split between women and men in those positions. And that has happened recently, so a lot is still to be seen. But what this panel is about how it might change the industry, both from a content perspective and what we put on the screen, as well as how it feels and how we belong in the studios that we work for. And I first would like to go to the content part. And because myself, I work now with Jen Lee, our Chief Creative Officer. She's working on Frozen 2. And she makes these characters, Elsa and Anna, that are almost a reflection of what she actually is herself, strong females. And I was wondering for you all, how do you feel what your leadership will bring to the content that you're creating within your studios and what you currently have in development? Kristen, I'll go to you.
Oh, and I was just thinking, do I have an answer for that? Well, you know, I think we all bring a lot of ourselves to these movies, but really, mainly, I think the artists are what bring, you know, they're what bring on screen, what represents them. And everybody talks about being a really filmmaker-driven studio. That's sort of like a mantra we all have, but it's like, can you really walk the walk? And it's hard, you know. We made 2 really different movies last year with Hotel Transylvania 3 and the Spider-Verse movie, and sometimes it was scary, you know, like not knowing exactly how those movies would turn out, not knowing if we would finish them in time for release. That was really interesting. Allison's worked with Lord Miller. She knows what I'm talking about. And it's just genuinely walking that walk and supporting filmmakers is what we are all about. And I'm frustrated actually sitting here today because I wish so badly I could talk about some of the female directors behind our movies, and we're not ready to announce a few things yet that I hope we can announce in a few months. But I think what I bring is just trying to empower the artists to have to put their vision on screen and to create a safe environment for them to do that.
You know, we have an interesting challenge just because we're doing a lot of IP-based movies, and when you look at sort of the world of Looney Tunes or let's say Hanna-Barbera, there just aren't a lot of female characters. I mean, if you just take the Looney Tunes, it just seems like between Granny and I think, many think that Tweety is a girl, but I think that Tweety is actually not a girl, but there just aren't that many female characters. So the concept, and also in Hanna-Barbera, there aren't very many diverse characters. So for us, it was really important to either just kind of go, are we going to change genders of these characters, or can we really dig into the canon and find female characters and kind of elevate them? So it's been a fun and interesting journey to try and kind of elevate characters and create more diversity in IPs that don't have it. And I'm excited that we're getting there. We've been actively trying, and I think we have some really exciting characters coming out.
It's funny you should mention that, and I just sort of mentioned that I wanted to be an astronaut when I was little. So we're making a movie right now called Over the Moon, and it was a project that I worked on and developed when I was at Pearl Studios, a studio that's now known as Pearl Studios in Shanghai, which used to be DreamWorks Animation. And when the idea was first pitched, which was a girl who built a rocket ship and flies to the moon, I was like, yeah, we're making that movie. And so, and it's, you know, been sort of putting the pieces together to keep it going through all these different transitions. But I think what I'm getting at is that what we're all trying to do, I think, when we're making animated features and when we're making series, is to make things that have universal themes and ideas in them. That we're making stories that we think are very, very personal, not only to me, obviously, because I wouldn't really make much of an audience, but that are personal to everybody who watches them, that kind of find that universal point of connection between the stories and the characters and the audience. So whether you're literally a little girl who wanted to be an astronaut, or you're somebody who has a dream that seems a bit crazy, you'll be able to relate to those characters. And I think it's that putting yourselves into everything that you do that makes the movies resonate.
Yeah, I agree. This is definitely a filmmaker-driven, content arena. And in TV, we have a lot more shots to give fresh voices a chance because of the volume and the scale. So we have a lot of shows that are, a few shows that are completely female-driven in nature, and we have some that are completely male-driven in nature. And now getting into the feature side, we have to build the franchises of tomorrow, and it's really interesting getting into what was put in development and filtering out all the things that just felt like it was exclusionary, and trying to find things that did have universal themes that were inclusive. And sometimes, like our next movie coming out, Abominable, written and directed by a woman, Jill Colton, and starring a strong female character, it's a very emotional and personal movie. And, of course, test screenings are test screenings. You're, giving people free popcorn and having them watch it. But this movie resonated with, boys and dads too. And we think it's a universal story and one that's very powerful. So just because there hasn't been that in the market beforehand, it doesn't mean there can't be those kinds of stories in the market today.
So about just under 2 years ago, my co-president isn't here, but he would always say that he was an animation writer. And when we were both promoted into this position, we sat down and we really discussed like what we wanted the studio to be and where the stories came from. And it came from character, but it was also putting the stories back into the filmmaker's hands and supporting that. And at all costs, it's like walking that walk that Christine was talking about. And it's the longest sprint marathon relay race that's 6 years long at times. And it's nerve-wracking, but if you get the person that believes in it, if you can inspire them, if you can hold on to the dream when you're in the last legs of the race and you're exhausted, that's what we wanted to do. We wanted to get the germs of the ideas from the inside. We look at everything, but it was really getting the voices of the talented artists to actually come and bubble up and feel like they can actually say what they wanted to make, and then pick the ones that everybody felt great about and going after those dreams. So to become filmmaker friendly and to be filmmaker first, you really have to put a lot of faith in. It's a bold journey because you don't know. You get to the screenings and you pray, but at the end of the day, you have to have the passion for it. You have to believe you're going to make these aspirational characters, and that's really what we look for. We're looking for the stories that will make people sit back and have an aha moment, or fall in love with something, or that they didn't even think they'd ever love, or just a whole new generation of family entertainment that people can go to as groups and enjoy. So we have a lot of lofty goals. I think we're hitting a lot of them, and there's always more room for improvement, but at the core of it, it's the creative, and it's the characters, and it's the vision and the passion that drives it. So that's what we look for.
When I started at Nickelodeon about 5 months ago, I had 3 big ideas that I was focused on, and it was number 1, culture, and that the culture would be artist-centric, creator-centric. Number 2, that we would hire and target creators that were diverse and inclusive and women. And 3, that we would build a robust slate that would deliver to our audience, to the Nickelodeon audience, stories that reflect themselves. And I truly believe it's top down. We took a look at our executives and we restructured, but we needed to hire for inclusion. We needed to hire for diversity and inclusion. So in the last 5 months, we've hired 3 diverse executives, promoted 2, which has made an incredible impact on the creators that we have hired and that want to work with us, and an incredible impact on our slate. In the last 5 months, we've acquired 10 projects. Half of them are, all of them are either created by women or diverse creators, and or have female or diverse leads. So, I think our hope as a brand is that when kids and families turn on Nick, that they see themselves and a reflection of themselves. And families are blended today. I personally, I'm Japanese American. My kids are Japanese, American, Jewish, Catholic, French, and Italian. So, and I'm not alone. And so it's important that, we are identifying stories that reflect the world.
Yeah, thank you. Most of you touched on it already, but going into the content was also that part about ourselves and our studios and how what talent we have. And do you feel that we are doing enough to support women in the industry? And have you, as leaders, launched initiatives or projects that support, attract, retain female talent in your studios? No.
Not yet. I think these things take a while. I think we've started, kind of on the writing levels. We've hired a number of female writers and trying to get it in, trying to grow talent. But it's hard. It's hard to find the women that are here to put them here. And so, I think we all have to do more. I know we definitely have to do more. at actively both recruiting, finding projects that we can really encourage women to be pursuing, and then nurturing them and mentoring them through the process so that they are ready for those top spots. So,
I'll echo. Clearly, we're not doing enough. You're never doing enough until it's truly equal at the top. I mean, we're working on it. Again, we have several female directors. I wish I could announce them, but it's got to start at the intern level, at the trainee level, and work its way all through the organization and to the top, so that we have as many female directors as we do male, or Lord forbid, more female directors than men. So we, like Allison, we're working on it.
And I'm sort of with you, Christine, which is we have a lot of really exciting, particularly the future space, female directors that we're not yet able to announce. But it has been 100% a mission since I've gotten there. And in the series space as well, we're really focusing on making sure that we have female creators. One of the things that I've seen absolutely is true is if you have diverse creators, you will have a diverse crew. So you really have to just make that decision that you're going to stick by hiring women and diverse creators to start with, and then you have to also make them successful. Right. And when I say make them successful, I mean give them all of the resources and tools and support that you would give anybody, but every single thing they need to be successful. Otherwise, you haven't done the job. Just hiring women is not going to do it.
We are super concentrated on building our talent that we have within the studio. We are very invested in creating career paths. We have a group called Creative Talent Management, which knows everyone from a PA to the executive producer / director, and they have interviews with everyone and make sure that they are pathed in the way that they want to be pathed and where their talents lead them. We also have both a formal and an informal mentoring program. So we hired a very young, inexperienced producer who had a great vision for a show. Peter Galtot spoke about it earlier. And we surrounded her with experienced people who can make sure that she can do what she needed to do and still learn on the job without, just being thrown in with no support or safety net. So those are the things that we try to do. We try to cast, and then we try to give mentors within the studio. It may not even be on your own shows that you could avail yourselves of. And we're doing the same on the feature side, in physical production and in story, because those are the story positions especially are the ones where people grow up to be directors and showrunners. So that's where we're placing a lot of our emphasis.
We hit it in a few different areas, everything from the people that are in-house and tracking. So we had somebody that was a trainee that was a lighter, and she was amazing, but we hired her in as a full-time employee. We had a pitch week. She pitched us a short. We fell in love with it. We put her in our story trainee program that's in-house, and now she's directing her short. And to everyone else's point, we make sure that she's supported completely. She's about 22 years old, and she's going to be a rock star at it. We look at all of the colleges, but then we also decided that how could we do one layer below that? So what we did was we looked at, Blue Sky is on the East Coast, and it's at the moment the only full animated studio on the East Coast in the States. So we looked at the schools that we were predominantly going to recruit, and we went to them and we said, okay, here's the deal. We're going to go to high schools, and we're going to start breaking down the walls and barriers for people for entry. And we're going to start, and our artists all put up their hands, and we started mentoring these kids. And then we went to the colleges and we said, okay, we're going to get these guys and we're going to shepherd them through, and the ones that are really inspired, then we're going to come to you and we're going to ask you for your help. And hopefully what we're hoping is that with 3 universities on the East Coast and us, we've made a marriage so that we can promote more females through that and just see how it rolls. So that's what we're doing.
I'm so happy to say that Nickelodeon as a studio is just shy of 50-50. And also, we are also recognizing non-binary as well. And that is like something that those numbers precede me, for sure, and I inherited that. And I think my job and this new regime's job at Nickelodeon is to focus on retention. I mean, I think that is a really harsh statistic for everybody here, is that it's very easy to identify and bring in, and you can focus on creating a safe place to cultivate and give women and people of diversity and opportunity. I think that where we can do a lot better is retention. And so we are focusing on our mentorship programs, our trainee programs, and our focus on the culture at NIC and making it a creator, artistic, driven culture is one that's going to help us, we believe, to retain our diverse pool of talent.
Great, perfect. And I know most of you participated right before this panel, actually, in a breakout session upstairs, a workshop, and I wasn't there, but I heard that you solved all problems.
Oh, yeah. Done.
Would love to hear more about it.
I missed it too. What'd you guys figure out?
We're not talking
Oh, yeah, no. You should have come to the panel.
Right?
Well, I think what was really interesting is we took different sort of areas like directing and women of color, and then just in general, kind of the overall, the community of what we can do together to change things. And it was great to just sort of deep dive into the specifics of what are the activities and process that we can put in place so that we can build a set of metrics for creating female directors, and how should, since diverse, to say women of color, there are so many different types of diversity. So how could we kind of focus on one? So I feel like I don't know if I should give away the solutions. We only were in there an hour. I'm not sure we had, but certainly we were on the director team, and I felt like we came up with some good ideas for just setting systems of metrics, and then also creating more of a sense of inclusion from top to bottom within the studios and within the community to make it clear what that track is to get to be a director.
Yeah, I think, one of the things when you talk about inclusion and diversity that comes up is that how are the systems set up in a way that end up with a similar result all the time, right? So if you think about the process for hiring your director, it not only is it male or female skewing, but it sort of favors a certain type of candidate, right? It favors a certain type of person who can show up in a room in a certain way, convince a group of executives that they can be trusted with a film. That person may or may not be the most qualified person. They're the person who does that part of it the best. And so that style, that process that has been sort of honed over 100 years in show business might be one that is keeping quieter, more introverted people, might be keeping women or diverse voices out of the room and out of the leadership role. So what's interesting, I think, is to really step back from the day-to-day and say, what are the systematic things that might need to change to really make an impact on the business?
Yeah.
The other thing from both the lunch and the kind of breakout meetings that I thought was a big takeaway was nothing will change unless we all work together, right? So there's this very unique moment in the history of animation where not only the 6 of us, but Jennifer Lee and Rory Soria, so 2 other women, are running the animation studios. And I think that doesn't mean that we need to inherit the legacy of how studios behave with each other from the 100 years of men running studios before us, but we can reinvent it as a more collaborative place with kind of some shared goals if we're willing to make that risk. So it's the idea that, if we come up with tools or ideas or systems and you're like, oh, we have this great program that works, then we should all do that program and feel really good about saying like, oh, we have this online way of recruiting talent that's actually resulted in great stuff. You should try that over there too. And if we can get together and make a change, I think that's going to be a huge difference.
I agree.
One other thing we heard this morning was that in our efforts of inclusion, we sometimes could become exclusive of others, and especially the men that don't necessarily feel part of the conversation. And Have you encountered that, and how are we dealing with that, and how can we respond to that vulnerability?
I think when we are in these settings, it's very easy to think that people are being excluded because the conversation is super focused on a few topics. For us, I think what we do is we focus on the work. And if the work is excellent, everyone's included in the conversation. And it's also just being respectful and hearing all voices. But, I don't think, I think the men at DreamWorks are also, some of them are completely enlightened, and some of them just have to hear how sometimes their comments can fall in a way that is maybe not the way they meant it. So they are, they will evolve as well, and as long as the work is good, animation is a process of such collaboration and teamwork. I think people have to all bond together and have to figure out how to work together because you are basically a family for 4 years or more, or less, hopefully.
What I'm finding at Sony Pictures Animation, which is great, is all the men in positions of leadership and who can choose, they're very eagerly picking diverse partners, female partners, leads under them. And I think that this is because we are all recognizing we're not doing this to do anybody any favors. I mean, we're not doing it for some moral high ground reason. That's like a byproduct. We're doing it because it's good business. That's how we're going to succeed, is as Ramsey said, the world has changed and the world wants different kinds of stories from different kinds of storytellers. And I feel like, I think the men get it. I think the men are going to be okay, and I think the men, for the most part, are excited about the change.
And my personal little soapbox is just that I think that, and we have to lead the charge and just sort of changing the language and keeping it about the quality of the work and about the quality of the candidates. And it isn't a women taking jobs away from men, it's just there's more jobs, and it's just being done by a more diverse group of people. And I think the more that we can help to sort of underline the fact that it isn't, oh, you would have gotten that job if that girl wasn't there, and more of it, like, that's the best project one, work harder on the next one. I feel like that's going to help make everybody feel like they're all part of the same
It is great that
challenge.
this is happening in a moment where there's such an explosion of animation.
Yes, exactly.
It's true. We're not like scrapping for this small field. There's so much going on. There's enough for everybody.
Yeah, there really is.
And if you think about the abundance of content, you need fresh voices. You need a different point of view, and that's where it gets exciting.
Yeah, I think we're particularly in need of a lot of filmmakers. So, but one of the things that we think about a lot is, just geographic diversity, meaning that if the pool of talent that we were drawing from to make all of our movies and all of our shows were just in the LA area, we wouldn't be able to create the kind of variety of shows that we need. So we're really also incredibly focused on finding creators all over the world that can do shows for us. And that just makes the pool that we all have to choose from so much bigger and richer.
Excellent. On a more personal level, did any of you have female leaders or champions that mentored you, that helped you throughout your career, that helped you step along and find the confidence that is needed to do the jobs you do right now? But can you talk a little about that experience and what you learned?
I love mine so much. I want to jump in. I was so lucky. I was given 2 big breaks in my career, both times by a woman named Amy Pascal. She gave me the job I currently have, and she has been an incredible mentor and just an inspiration. And she has taught me to be passionate, to not operate from fear, that you can be compassionate and a badass at the same time, and I am eternally grateful to her, and just so grateful that I had a female mentor. I used to work at a studio where it was such a boys' club, and it was so disheartening, and they would all go off on the weekend and play basketball and golf, and like nobody ever invited me. I was like, I could play golf, I could try to play basketball, and it was the pits, and so I hope everybody had a great female mentor, and I feel really lucky to have had Amy.
I had a woman named Kathleen Gavin, who certainly, she was on Rescuers and Under, and then also I went up to San Francisco with her to do Nightmare Before Christmas, and she was just the kind of producer who, she sort of knew everybody's name, she knew what everybody did, you could hear her laugh like resounding through the hallways, and really was like, I remember she said to me once, like, Alison, if you're doing it wrong, you got to delegate, and it was like the best advice she was ever given. And I do feel like she just gave me the confidence, and then also set an example of leading with compassion and with humor and with and just really a lot of respect for the I'm crying to think about her. Respect for the crews from top to bottom, and she's an inspiration.
I had two. I got very lucky. So half of my career was all, you would call it the boys club, and it was very male driven. And then I got lucky enough to meet Sandy Rabins, who is now at Paramount. And she was my boss at Sony Pictures Animation, and she taught me a lot. And she was a great leader. And her partner was Penny Finkelman-Cox, and they looked for females, and this was early 2000s, and they gave a lot of people a lot of opportunity, and that was really great. And then earlier on, and then later on, Stacey Snider twice, as a young production executive, pretty much terrified of everything that was going on in live action at TriStar, with lots of films and people running around yelling a lot. She's one day at a meeting, she turned around, which she doesn't remember, and she said, "Kid, if you know the answer and you do, speak up." And then Stacey Snider actually promoted me into the job of co-president about 2 years ago. And she's always got my back, no matter where she is. So she's been great.
I didn't have a singular mentor. I cherry-picked what I admired from a variety of different people, but I did start my career under a woman leader named Jerry Laybourne. And she had no media experience, but she had a mission about upending the model for kids and empowering kids. And she said something that stuck with me because it was so bold. It was, if it's good for kids, it's good for business. And it's more than just something that's directly applicable against Nickelodeon. Of course it was, but it was just, if it's good for the audience, if it's good for the creative good, it's going to be good for business. And it's been a guiding principle in my career.
I would say my first mentor is definitely my stepmother, who was a public aid defender in the Bronx. And so she set the bar really high because she was always fighting for justice, which led me to cherry pick really great mentors. Mark Bakshi, men can be great mentors too, who was head of production at Paramount Pictures for many years, and Karen Rosenfeld, who was president at Paramount. And they both taught me to just really follow my gut, to trust myself, to understand the power of, good taste, identifying great stories, and following your gut to put the right people together and manage story and manage productions from top to bottom. They were just really standout, fantastic people.
Yeah, the one person that I think of most often is somebody who should be sitting here with us today if she probably wasn't busy doing something else right now, which is Marie Soria, who runs Paramount right now. A shout out for Marie. Woo-hoo. But yeah, back when I was a really, really junior executive at Disney, she really took me under her wing, and I was a very kind of reserved and shy person. And if you know Marie, she is not any of those things. She is super tough and always tells you exactly what she feels. And it was such great lesson to kind of work with her and to see how she approaches situations with just such honesty and transparency, and never really backs down if she's fighting for something she believes on the story side. She's such a story structure, script-driven, smart, creative person. And then I later worked with her again at Fox and again at DreamWorks, and sort of throughout my career, she's always been someone who I knew if I was just I don't know what to do, whether it was I can't figure out how to solve the third act, or this director's driving me crazy, I could always go to her and I would come out of her office with a solution.
Fantastic. What is a piece of advice that you would like to share with the audience today, and especially with those in the audience that might be starting a career in animation? And what would be something that you might have done if you would have to start again a career in animation differently, or what would you like to recommend for them?
One of the principles I've had that has guided me is to make it about the work. I started in physical production, which was a safe place for me to be, and then I could observe what worked and what didn't work. And when I moved over into the creative side, I realized by that point that just trying to make it about the work, I saw when people were too emotionally invested, if they made it about themselves, if they tried to cut out other people and didn't listen, it didn't work. So I was able to take that lesson, really internalize it, and it served me to get over my anxiety that if it's about the work, like, I'm a good girl, I have to do that work, you know, and so I will push myself to get it done and to take the personal out of it. It has really helped me.
I want a little bit, not converse to that because that's brilliant, but also to put yourself forward though, because one of the things that I find a lot with, especially female creators who come to pitch is I feel like they are to have more confidence to be bold, because I do feel like it's we need to create a safe space so people can put themselves out and be vulnerable and bring their heart song to us.
We'll just keep piggyback on each other, because that's my main advice to anybody starting out is do not be driven by fear. Do not do it, because, and I see it all the time still. Again, we work so hard to create a safe space, but people are trained to make decisions based on fear. I'm deciding this to avoid this thing. It's like, no, follow your passion, follow your heart, as others have said, and don't be afraid. And I also think operate from optimism, you know, like, it only takes, you can get 500 no's. You just need one yes to get it done. So don't give up, be optimistic, and don't be afraid. Never be afraid.
I would say to, and all due respect to the gentlemen in the audience, to the women in the audience, please consider a career as a director or a showrunner. Please think about it. I know so many people who go down the path of producing or writing or other jobs in the industry who are women who I know have the skills and that just are being driven by fear.
Don't be a supporter.
Don't be a supporter. Don't support. Everybody has a great story.
That sounds horrible. Don't support unless you want to support.
Yeah, exactly. No, but I really think everybody has a great story to tell. Everybody does. You all have something to say because your story is wonderful and unique. Your voice is important. It should be heard. There's Suzanne Berge right there. You have a great story to tell. You should be directing a movie. I'm telling you, everybody out there should be directing a movie, and you have a story to tell. Please tell it.
I kind of go by the principle that you can always learn something new every day. And it doesn't matter if it's from a man or a female or a 3-year-old kid. If you're observant and you're open, you'll hear something. It'll ignite something in you. It's to lens to that story that you want to tell or be a part of that mission and the vision to tell a story. And another thing is that once you know it, don't compromise. Don't buy into anybody else's agenda because it's all about the work, like Margie was saying. Don't compromise your vision. Don't compromise the team's vision. Just be true to that passion and it'll take you through. So that's kind of where we come from, or where I come from every day.
I would say be true to yourself, ask for it. You're not going to get it if you don't ask. Be confident, and follow your dreams and passions. Nothing can stop you.
Thank you. One last question that I can't not ask you is, you're all in positions of influence right now. If you look back later on this time in animation industry and on yourself and your careers, what would you like people to say? What is the legacy that you would like to leave into this industry and how you're hoping and willing to change it? What are your hopes?
Who's taking that one first?
Yeah. Maybe a hope is that we were really the crest of the wave to start the change in inequality and sort of being gender blind and kind of creating an industry that is sort of has great equality. So I feel like I would be happy to feel like I was in on the ground floor of that renaissance.
I keep looking at everyone else.
Okay. I this is going to show you I'm very old. So
Me too.
Yeah, we all are.
We're all super old. But they used to have a thing called videotapes. This was before CDs. No, but when videotapes came out, there was suddenly a lot of money in the market. And because there was a lot of money in the market, and suddenly the tools to make a film were available to anybody in their backyard, a lot of incredible filmmakers came out of this era and this particular moment in time because there was just this surge of opportunity. I would love it if 10 years from now people look back at this period of time where the streaming services and the diversity of creators and the diversity of people running the studios, you look back at this time and you say, that's where this whole generation of amazing new filmmakers came from. They came from this moment in time where there was unprecedented opportunity for filmmakers to find their voices and to celebrate this moment.
Great. I agree with that. That's
I
amazing.
agree.
Yes.
I agree.
You know, my hope is that we'll have made work that's impactful and it becomes part of the social conversation. And I think, you know, that's piggybacking on what Melissa just said.
Yeah, and I guess, you know, I think we're all saying the same thing, to look back and think, wow, we individually and collectively like changed the face of animation, because there's been such a sameness for so long. There was a formula. It is a money, you know, it's not, it's the movie business, right? And so there's been a formula that's worked so well. We were at DreamWorks, there was a formula that worked well, and you know what, the formula got old, and it's time for things to be really, really different. And I hope that, again, in 20 years, 30 years, 100 years, people look back and go, whoa, what was going on then? That is when things really took a turn, and movies just got super awesome and bold.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with everything everybody said, and I would just say I hope people look back at Nickelodeon at this time when I'm there and just feel like, you know, we were breaking fresh talent, giving women and people of color an opportunity to be in a director chair and make their own shows and make great shows. So.
And I think it's the moment in time where, if you looked at the conversation this morning, it's 50-50, right? So it's 50-50, and we're sitting here on women in animation. But as the collective, if all the females and all the males that run these studios get together, and it's a trickle-down effect, I would love and hope to see that collectively we all become part of the conversation and make the change together. It's not us or them, it's we. That's what I would hope for.
Oh, I love that.
What an amazing group of women. But with this, I would like to open it up for questions to the audience, if there's any questions out there that you would like to ask.
Not a one. Be bold.
No?
Wow. Guess it got figured out.
We covered everything.
Did you have one?
I'm a voice director for animation. I was wondering is there a chance to be diversity on voice directing for, I don't know, English originals? Because I'm Brazilian, and I always hear that only Americans can do voice directors for original animation in the US. And
Really?
how would diversity go in my area?
I've never heard of that.
Yeah, me either.
You mean in the U.S. or in the territories?
In the U.S.?
In the U.S.?
For the originals, yeah, in the US.
It's in the U.S. I've never heard of that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, but you don't live in the U.S.
Not yet.
Oh. Yeah, I mean,
It's hard to direct
If you come to the
it's, I don't really work with voice directors, so I've only sort of peripherally seen it. I mean, so I don't know about in the U.S. I think you just have to sort of start to network and kind of get in. I don't know that we would not hire a voice director because they were from Brazil if you had the contacts to the talent and the abilities.
And if anything, like, we're always striving to have more Latinx,
Yeah.
and, you know, people from South America, Central America, so take heart, because I feel like we're looking for people like you, actually.
absolutely.
I mean, because that's why I thought, because one of the things I think is important is to really start to also get dubbing talent and go into the other territories and really, especially with the, like, sort of classic characters and such, to treat the casting, the voice casting, with as much fanfare as we kind of treat the voice casting in the U.S. And so, to me, it seems like that might be a way, is just to posit yourself as, you know, maybe it's the, I don't know, the Brazilian or the Latin American person who will really get that celebrity talent in for those territories, and sort of start to make a name for yourself as someone who can kind of really build them up that way. Because I think that that's an exciting new direction to really give it the time that it needs to cast those parts.
Anybody else? Oh, there's one. Do you want
That guy?
No, you can. You're loud.
Hi. It was said earlier that a big part of the conversation and a big influence that comes into this subject is from the top down. And I thankfully agree. But, you know, to anybody who works in one of the studios that you run, or many studios.
Here.
Oh, okay, I'll get a mic.
Can you pass that down?
Sorry. Yeah, so to the point of it being a top-down leadership thing, I think that's really admirable to hear that the leadership of all these big studios really would like to see this continue on, and for this to be a moment, the crest of the wave. But what's something that you guys have seen from any part of the ground floor, or anybody who works within the studio who can basically act an ally? Like, what are the things that you guys have seen from just anybody on the ground floor that are really helpful within your studio spaces?
We're really looking to have ideas bubble up from the bottom up. You know, if everyone's depending on me to come up with all the ideas, it's going to be very sad and very slow. So we really, I mean, I have a great team, and we are all looking to empower all the levels down below, because, you know, the ideas that I have about organizing the studio may not be in sync with what people are needing right now. So we are looking at all levels to get feedback and holding forums and brainstorms just to see where people's heads are at and what they're looking for as well.
I mean, we just announced, actually today, a shorts program at Nickelodeon that will be run by Conrad Vernon, who directed Sausage Party. And that is a way to speak to the artists in our studio and around the world, to pitch their ideas and to share ideas. And so that's really exciting for us. But I think one of the, I would say, a great example where diversity and inclusion is practically finding its way in the work is when we are representing people of color in animation, and we're designing people of color. When we have a diverse group of people talking about the art, it makes it authentic, and it makes it not, it also helps us not perpetuate stereotype and tell stories that are real.
Yeah. We have two creative executives. I have two. They're both female. They're both fantastic. They work their butts off. And from everything from our pitch week that I mentioned earlier, where, you know, they get 50 people coming to them with stories of all shapes and sizes, and they meld it down, and they get the ones that they really think are possible, and they send those forward, and then they keep working with all the people, and we're trying to bubble and incubate from the inside out. And we have a pod system, which was never in effect before, and it's how you bring those people into the system and how you look at everything of who this character should really be, and making them different and taking them bit by bit. But it's a daily task. And it is from the ground up. Just like Margie said, you have to look at it, and people have to give you your feedback, but they also have to feel safe bringing it to you. So that's the big inclusive part in the collaboration.
Yeah, I think you may have been asking a little bit about allyship and how you can help support other people, maybe at your company or companies where you work. I think one of them is helping create that safe space and really listening, seeing who the voices are in the room that maybe you're not hearing as much, and creating room for those voices, and opportunities for individuals who may not have the kind of as loud a voice to be heard. And everybody can do that. Everybody can be very conscious of stepping back and creating space for alternate voices.
But I would say, and I'm just echoing what somebody else here said, is even if you speak more softly, you have to speak, right? Like we're all trying to create these environments where we're listening, but we're relying on you guys to speak up. My door is open, and some people choose to come through it and tell me things, not just about movies they want to make, but like different ways we could run the studio or ways to fix something. And I'm so appreciative of that when somebody really junior has the courage to come in and do that. And again, I think it's incumbent on both sides of the equation.
Yeah. And I encourage women to do it because I feel like I get a lot of guys coming in telling me how I could better run the studio. And it'd be nice.
Got some
One of you ladies, like, a lot of
we love you
coffees that
guys.
I end up having to buy.
We know none of you are going to mansplain. None of you guys do that, but some guys do that.
Cool, thanks.
I think we're running out of time, but I want to thank this fantastic, incredible talent here on the stage for participating in the conversation and for driving the change that is much needed. And for all of you for being here. So have a great afternoon. I think I bring up Corinne and Eleonore from Les Femmes Animent, the French Women in Animation group, to take it from here. Great. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you again.